Hello and welcome to the Premier League preview. We can't call it the Premier League preview because we'd get done. I'm Adam Wilbourn from WhatCulture, joined by Adam Clery and Andy Murray from WhatCulture to preview all this weekend's action. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Football on either iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from, for daily football podcasts. And before we dive straight in to this weekend's action, we have to deal with the breaking news right now. The Newcastle Takeover is definitely happening. Adam Clery.
I'll just stop you there. And I've said this a million times already. I think I've said this for every single one of the preceding 7 takeovers. If Newcastle are getting taken over, you will know about it when it is announced that Newcastle United have been taken over. So I take any of this stuff that comes out now with not even just a pinch of salt. They literally fill St James's Park up with salt, add another 30,000 seats onto the opposite side, then keep filling it up, and that is the amount of salt I want added to this story.
I remember being with you towards the end of last season. I think it might have been in the summer break, actually, when that other takeover was definitely happening, and nothing materialised.
You will recall we were getting on a flight back from Las Vegas, and as we were about to get on the plane, it was, there's some talk that Newcastle are on the verge of a takeover. This is, I think it was The Sun had the story. They're on the verge of a takeover, and I was like, Jesus! By the time we land in London, it could happen.
You were saying if it happened, we're going out.
Yeah, so, see, I know we're jet lagged and we haven't slept for 2 days, but if we land and Ashley's gone, we're going straight out. Yes. We landed and it hadn't happened yet, and you were like, "Oh, when do you reckon?" And I turned to you and went, "Oh, it's not happening." I said, "It probably isn't happening now. If it's on the verge of a takeover and it hasn't happened yet, it's just not happening." And lo and behold, it all went quiet and it disappeared. What a shock. Mike Ashley's still in charge, and there was too much confusion in the summer to sort out a proper contract from Rafa or investors aside, and here we are, bare bones again. So I will say, take all of this with the biggest pinch of salt available to you. However, being reported this morning that Peter Kenyon has come back. Yes, him again. He's come back. He apparently secured the necessary funds to take over the club after drumming up investment with this weird brochure that's now also been leaked. One thing I would like to add is if you read the brochure, it's clearly from a good few months ago. And obviously before it's come out, they've had to tweak a few things so it still makes sense. And they've clearly Control F'd Rafa Benitez and replaced it with Steve Bruce. Because there's lines in it like, the man has unparalleled success across Europe. And all these lines which just do not apply to Steve Bruce whatsoever. Who I don't think
Spanish legend Steve Bruce.
Following his time at Real Madrid, Bruce has come into Newcastle and all this.
Champions League winner.
But the headlines for this are they've offered Mike Ashley 125 million upfront in cash. He can take that and he goes. That would put the new group in immediate charge, and there is something like 300 million as a package, which comes to him in drips and drabs from there. I think it's a Florida-based consortium that they've come together for it. Apparently, they've already done proof of funds, and they will inject an immediate 50 million into the club for operating costs, so they can afford to basically take it over and run it day to day. Now, a few caveats to this. They're not buying him out outright. It would be done over a number of years, and apparently Ashley would retain all the licensing and advertising rights to the club until he'd been fully bought out, so it'd still be Sports Direct absolutely everywhere all over the ground while that goes on.
Is that not the best of both worlds for him?
Well, yes, because apparently one of the sticking points in previous takeovers, rather than the fact they simply never existed and were simply there to shut people up during transfer windows, was that he wanted to retain management of the club shop, and he wanted all the advertising rights, etc., which is astounding, given that the man has failed entirely over 10 years to build the commercial side of the company. There's a big graph in this brochure that shows Man United, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Tottenham, and one or two others, how they have grown over the last 15 years as the Premier League has expanded as a commercial operation. The size and the wealth of the club and the value of the clubs have all gone up something like anywhere between 200 and 500%. In Chelsea's case, obviously that's when they got taken over, it's gone up 600 or 700%. And then at the bottom of this graph is Newcastle, and it's gone down about 8%. They literally haven't grown as a commercial operation. So why Mike Ashley wants to retain the rights to the commercial side of the club, which he has spectacularly failed to grow in the biggest boom period of English football ever, is beyond me, but still apparently that's something he wants. It's just, apparently he said he's going to give a definitive answer in 10 days.
It's weirdly vague.
It's just like, I'll let you know in a week and a half.
Yeah, lol.
It's just, as I say, literally until new owners are stood outside the ground holding a scarf and the headline is new owners, Newcastle United are being taken over as far as I'm concerned.
Andy, the moment we started talking about this in the office this morning, you said something very profound regarding how many times this has happened, and just the fact that I mean, you it's the kind of the personification of most Newcastle fans.
Yeah, it's pretty much every 6 months. Someone like this emerges. I'm still waiting for Barry Moat to make a triumphant return to the column inches, but. No, I've followed Newcastle all my life. My dad is a Newcastle supporter. When I lived in Aberdeen, we'd come down, we'd travel all these miles for one game and go home on the same day. Ridiculous, stupid, objectively dumb, but that's what we did. Past couple of years, completely lost all interest in the club. It's now more of it's almost like Stockholm syndrome. You can't quite let it go entirely because you've been abused so badly by this thing. But it's just more of a casual annoyance than anything else. The Mike Ashley era grinds your faith, your hope, every positive attribute that you put towards the club, grinds it down to the point where complete elimination. We've had so many slivers of these things over the past 2 or 3 years that it's impossible.
One thing I will say is the only real cause for hope in any of this, if I'm desperately trying to find any of it, is you can set your watch, you can set your calendar by the Newcastle Takeover talk. It's always a few weeks before the transfer window opens. So there's always one there was one last Christmas, there's one this Christmas, there's one every summer. It's happening this time. It's always around the transfer window. So it's always so cynically orchestrated. So there's not a big, imagine if there was
it's like look over there.
Imagine if there was no takeover talk this summer while Rafa's contract was winding down and we were letting Rondon leave and we were selling Perez and we were stripping the squad bare and bringing in virtually nobody of any real reputation to replace them. Rondon was a guaranteed source of goals in the Premier League. Perez had emerged as one of the most exciting young players we've had in years. We had one of the most elite level managers in the game. And he left and got replaced with Steve Bruce. Joelinton came in, who's completely unproven in this league for admittedly a large sum of money. And, the squad, imagine if all that was
Andy
going
Carroll
on.
came back.
Andy Carroll came back. But again, Andy Carroll's another one. I was like, look, there's Andy Carroll.
He's one of you.
Yeah, you like him. It's Steve Bruce. You can't complain about it. Not at the start of the club. We've got a lad from Wall's End in there and a man who falls off Newcastle Casino bar tables in the front. It's so bad. It's so bad. And I will say, the fact this is happening in, where are we now? End of September.
Yeah.
That's unusual. At least, there's nothing to distract from other than the fact that the club's on-field fortunes are quite bad. But,
you probably don't know the answer to this, but I'm going to put it to you regardless. What will it take to get rid of Ashley?
An upfront bid of £300 million and probably 5 years advertising rights.
Yeah.
But is the club worth something like that now?
No, of course it's not.
Because he's stripped, like you say, he's taken all the cash out of the club.
That's why he can't sell it, because he's got an unreasonable valuation on it. That's precise. The only way any takeover thing will be successful is if they look and they genuinely believe that the best case scenario for the next 5-10 years of the club can be achieved. Because it says here, the consortium, it's an opportunity to invest in a side which could be established as one of the top 10 clubs in the Premier League. Rafa got us into 10. You know what I mean? It's just, where realistically do you think you can go beyond that? They got into 10, then nothing really changed.
I always remember the speculation of, you're doing pretty well. There was rumours of a takeover, and then you're right, it's heading towards the January transfer window, and you explaining to me how he'll want this ridiculous figure. Plus, if they sign anyone in January, that's going to be added on top of it.
Yeah, they have to pay for that, and then if they go down, he wants even more money or something. It's just. The man fundamentally has no interest in selling Newcastle United. He is not an active seller of the club, because simply, if he was, he would have sold it. He's been on about selling it for 10 years. He would have simply just got rid of it. The man buys and sells businesses every couple of months on the British High Street. He never holds on to anything for too long. Look at it. He bought Game or something, didn't he? Or he's bought Debenhams and he's just, the man buys and sells for fun. I'm trying to sell Newcastle United. If you want to sell it, he would have sold it. The only way he will sell it is if an offer comes in where it's I've got to sell it for that price. It's just...
You Cockney bastards, get out of their club.
Hey.
There you go.
Hey.
Let's use this to look ahead to this weekend's action. Newcastle, the Sunday game away at Leicester. Of course, we had the pleasure of getting to watch Newcastle versus Leicester in the Carabao Cup earlier on this season. How do you reckon it's going to go this weekend?
Horrifically.
I'm glad there's another major talking point for Newcastle United that won't be that 3-0 defeat.
Yeah. I mean, there's your timing thing right
Genuinely right. If you have any kind of accounts on your phone for betting companies, and now I don't get me wrong, I think betting in sport is horrendous and I would never encourage anyone to do it. But honestly, if you're not putting 3 figures or above on Jose Perez to score in that game, you don't deserve your own money.
Scoring a Newcastle defeat might as well up those odds a little bit. Yeah.
I'm inclined to bring in Vardy for fantasy football this week.
Yeah, bringing a couple of defenders as well, because as talented as they are, these front 3 players just look wonky as hell to me every time.
Score prediction?
2-0.
I will say, just for a bit of balance, not to be totally doom and gloom, Newcastle tend to do quite well when they go to the King Power Stadium. I think they've won there the last 2 seasons and put in really good performances there the last 2 seasons. I can't think what might have changed from those 2 years to this, but by the by. I think if Alan Saint-Maximin comes back in, he looked really lively when he came on against Brighton. They was so two-dimensional. Yeah. They had no idea how to get past, and he just started running past players, which, lo and behold, opens up space and creates chances for you. There is talk that he wants to bring Almiron out of the side for a perceived lack of performances. That would be the most idiotic decision. I think he was the only way to relieve pressure on that side, to get the ball and run up the other end of the pitch. You simply play both of them. That's the solution. I don't think Almiron's got it in him to single-handedly turn the tide of games of football, but when you've got someone like John Joe Shelby in the side who's objectively letting players run past him, taking up bad positions, forcing Hayden and everyone else in the midfield to run around and do part of his job for him, you can't really look at your creative plays and go, well, you're not doing enough going the other way. Like, Almiron was picking up the ball on the edge of his own box pretty much every sort of couple of minutes against Brighton. What do you want a creative player to do from that position?
Yeah, precisely.
The late kickoff on Saturday sees Man City travel to Everton. Andy Murray, which Man City are we going to get this week? The one that lost to Norwich, or the one who almost broke the record for scoring in the Premier League?
You're going to get somewhere in between, which, going by recent goal averages, is probably something like a 4-0 victory. I mean, the Watford thing, Watford are pathetic. They're absolutely atrocious footballing side. Even, I think City's first 4 chances just flew straight in. So expected goals, all this nerd nonsense comes into play, but I've just Craig Burleyed myself there, haven't I?
He's got a laptop.
What are Everton on, like a 2-match losing streak or something at the moment?
They're not great,
to
be honest.
Look particularly convincing. Oh no, they've drawn or something. I don't know. I haven't been particularly thrilled with Everton this season. I think I sat on one of these fantasy footballing podcasts at the beginning of the season and said, put Everton defenders in. All their fixtures are really easy.
We all did.
And
guilty.
Well, your man Digne has scored and got an assist or whatever and bumped his ratings up. They've just not done anything. So I have no faith in Everton to do anything, and I think City will railroad
Is
them.
this a game where Everton raise their game to play against Man City, or will that still not be enough?
I don't know. Like, we looked at that we thought it was going to be a really fascinating season in terms of who's going to potentially finish in the top 6, and I think it still is if you look who's in there now. But Everton, one of the sides where you look, right, a couple of seasons of getting your ducks in a row that really looked steady at the back. I know I bring up the stat all the time. In 2019, up until a few weeks ago, they had the best defence after City and Liverpool, and like miles ahead of these other sides. But it's just not clicking, and they've spent a lot of money assembling this side for Silva to be the way he wants his side to play, and it just doesn't look like it's quite going to work for them. I never really like to advocate managers going, but it does look like it needs new impetus, some fresh blood. It's one of those. Everton are only going to be one big result away from being in that conversation again of, they've got it together, this could be a big run. And they're not, they're on set, they win, they can go back into 6th. You know what I mean? This week, they're not so far off the pace that it's a massive problem. But if you look at the sides they have dropped points, you're getting beat off Sheffield United at home. When you've got Man City coming up next, a disastrous result if you've got aspirations of being in the top 6. But I just think it's not a bad side, that Everton team. They can't play the same with like Wolves and Watford in the bottom 2. They can't be this bad for long, surely.
No, not forever, but
not forever. Turn more like.
You saying 4-0? Cleary, what are you saying?
5-0.
I'll go 3-0. I'll be generous.
I think it'll be close. I'll say 3-1.
Okay. Liverpool are the early game on Saturday away at Sheffield United. Potential banana skin, to use a footballing cliche. But are Liverpool now title favourites?
Yes, purely because they've already got a lead on Manchester City.
And they'll be, 8 points clear?
They could go 8 points clear.
15-game winning streak or something across all competitions. It's kind of nuts.
But that's the thing. For as much as I look at a lot of sides in this thing, they can't play that badly for that long. I think Liverpool, again, we said at the end of last season, the depth of that squad is not what it is. Yes. I mean, Man City took Sterling out, arguably the most important player, and won 8-0. I think if you take a Mane or a Salah out of that Liverpool side, they haven't got that luxury of recycling their players. They haven't got that luxury of bringing players in. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure they could recycle. Why I keep saying recycle? I'm sure they could
It's good. It's
refresh a couple of their
climate
players.
change.
Turn James Milner into a pair of shoes.
Yeah, I'm sure they could freshen it up a bit and still get a result in most games, but they wouldn't look quite as dominant. I think that will come into play as the season goes on. I think Liverpool getting a good lead on City now is their best chance of winning this league. They might pull up so far ahead that they can't quite be caught, and that's probably what they're aiming to do. But sooner or later, that slip-up is going to come, and that lack of performance is going to come. And I just think Man City they're going to be able to keep going for a little bit longer. Don't get me wrong, I would love this to go right the way down to the wire. I would love it to, but this is the kind of game where Liverpool needs to win. Tricky away time.
I sense Sheffield United are going to be pretty stubborn tomorrow, but I'm still going to go 2-0 Liverpool for this.
Yeah, I think Liverpool will probably overcome the storm that is Bramall Lane and all the noise they make there and stuff. But Sheffield United, I'm about to sit here and be an idiot and predict that a team that could be spearheaded by Ollie McBurney is going to cause Liverpool problems. But that Liverpool defence isn't quite what it was last season. Obviously, a lot of that can be attributed to the change in goalkeepers with Alisson being injured and how that affects the whole balance of the whole goddamn thing. I reckon they might put a little spanner in the works,
I actually agree with you because I watched that opening game against Norwich and I think the scoreline massively flattered Liverpool. Norwich were really at them for long parts of that game, and it's because we've said it a few times. The same reason Norwich got a result against City is because they're one of these sides that have come up and not gone, right, let's just buy 3 or 4 £20 million players and chuck them in. I have no idea what our identity is anymore. They've kept playing the way that got them loads of good results. And for early points of the season, that does catch a lot of sides out. It's why Sheffield United are doing as well as they are, despite having an objectively weaker side. And Norwich really did cause Liverpool problems by simply having a defined identity, by having a system that they weren't used to playing against. And I think anybody's got a chance against Liverpool. It's going to be a side who, as we've seen so far this season, play a different way, who are difficult to contain, who there isn't a game plan already in place for combating. So I think Liverpool will win. Don't get me wrong, but I do think there's a bloody nose in it for them at the very least.
Score prediction?
1-1. Why not?
I don't mind that actually. 1-1. Go on.
Get some
Go
more
on,
salad
Sheffield
United.
United.
Monday Night Football this week is Man United against Arsenal, a fantastic rivalry. How do you see this one going?
I mean, this could be anything from 0-0 to 5-5, couldn't it? It's just nuts.
To a draw.
yeah, it's going to be a draw. I think we could be in for quite a high-scoring draw here because I like a lot of players in that Arsenal backline. I really do. And I like a lot of their more defensive midfield players, like Gwen Dozie. I like Socrates a lot. But these players, David Luiz as well, they all have a defining characteristic between them, and that is that they are all bloody mental, and that each has the potential to play 10 out of 10 for 89 minutes and then Titus Bramble themselves for one of those minutes. So same goes for the Man United defence. On the first day, it looked wonderfully organised with the addition of Harry Maguire and Victor Lindelof looking like a player rebuy. He had a great season last year, but continuing that on. But players just seem to be able to cut through both of these teams. I think that Man United's central midfield is defensively quite suspect as well. Scott McTominay is a footballer who looks like he was given a job because he's quite tall.
Front cover of Pez.
Yeah, I watch him play for Scotland. He's no good. But by that logic, Andy Robertson would be a disaster of a player as well. So that's complete nonsense. But no, I fancy this to be high scoring. I fancy it to be a lot of fun as well. There's always the potential that Arsenal could Arsenal themselves. But our Man United may be becoming the new Arsenal at the moment as well. It's kind of really tough to get used to the idea, as someone who grew up with Man United being the dominant force, that Man United are no longer Man United. I think this is going to be loads of fun, Phil.
They categorically need to win this Man United. I know we're still very early on in the season, but we're not so early on in the season that you can't already have to revise your expectations for where you finish. They're currently 3 points behind Arsenal. This is their home game against them. You've got to realistically look at that and say Man United probably, by the time the season's run and dry, Spurs will probably have cemented third, you would imagine, unless somebody else gets in there. Liverpool and Man City are not touchable as far as they're concerned. That fourth spot is the highest they can possibly achieve. Arsenal are already 3 points ahead of them for that. If they beat them here, they go 6 points ahead. And realistically, Man United are going to haul back a 6-point deficit into fourth? Absolutely not. Certainly not the way they're playing at the minute without serious additions in January. It's must win for Man United. It's must not lose for Arsenal.
Yeah. 2-2, I'm going with.
Honestly, I think Man United might win it. I'm going to look like a tit come Monday, but I reckon the kids, they've absolutely got to. And if those players are actually remotely bothered about Ollie's job, they need to all work their asses off. Yeah, and we saw with the Chelsea game, like they've got it in there somewhere to pull out a big performance, and I think maybe this could be it. Maybe.
It's going to be 7-all.
Okay.
There you go.
I'd take that.
Yeah, me too.
Final question. You mentioned Spurs there. Are they in trouble?
Right. It's one of these things where you look at Spurs right now, and one or two things is going to happen. Either they're going to get it together as the season goes on, finish third, have an alright season, and we'll look back at the start of the season and go, bit of a wobble that, looked like things were rocking, but obviously just one of these things, it was a slow start. Or it's all going to unravel spectacularly. Pochettino will leave, a lot of their big players will want to go, and you'll be like, that was that. You could see there, you could see it all starting there. A lot of people are saying that, like, Pochettino looks like he's already preparing for his exit strategy. He's realised that he spent all this time and he's had all this success at Spurs without actually really having anything to show for it. He's put together a great side. They've had some great seasons, arguably the best Spurs side that has ever been, with some of the best players they have ever had. And yet, when they look back at it, there's no trophies to show for it. They didn't really have anything resembling a title challenge. There's obviously that joke about they came third in a 2-horse race that year. They got to the Champions League final and didn't win. They yet had, you would have presumed they could have got an FA Cup out of this at the very least, and they haven't done it. And the longer this goes on, the more Pochettino's reputation, his ability to go get that big job, diminishes. Because at the end of sort of last season, he could have got any job in the world. If Spurs drop out of the top 4, if they start struggling to get in the top 6, if they just have that one bad season, all of a sudden he's not the man you'd expect Real Madrid to go for.
He's Andre Villas-Boas, isn't he?
That is exactly it. And you just sort of worry for them a bit because they look all over the place, like from the back. The middle of the field doesn't look too great. Harry Kane's dropping all over the place to get these goals. I don't know wrong. But again, the Leicester result, or for parts of that game, you could see that Spurs side still being really good. But again, you know, they let that go. I think it was their season in a microcosm, that Leicester game. They still looked like Spurs. They took on a really good side and they outplayed them. But then it all started to unravel.
The Southampton game is huge for them, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a monster. You're just sitting waiting for the Spurs team to properly click into gear. Obviously, they had a fantastic win a couple of weeks ago, and then followed that by getting scudded off big bad Brendan Rodgers. Pochettino did this thing, the exact same thing last year when Spurs weren't, in the best of form. It was suspiciously at the same time the Man United job was kind of coming around the corner, and he was talking about it. He looked very frustrated again. He looked like he was trying to talk himself out of that job and into the next one. There's a lot of talk about Poch as this super loyal guy, and he's a proper professional and all this stuff, and I agree to a certain extent, but at the same time, sometimes his Spurs reign does feel like something of a ticking time bomb. So he really needs to. I think, a run of good results will turn that around. We saw it last season. By the end of the season, he's crying and properly back into the right headspace. Southampton this season are absolutely no slouches.
Tricky, aren't they? They're deceptive. We thought they were going to be rubbish.
Oh, yeah, I did. I tipped them to go down. I thought they haven't got anywhere near enough the firepower to keep themselves up. And it's not exactly, they haven't exactly been free scoring Southampton this season. They've scored 6 goals, but they've been organised enough that hasn't quite mattered yet. Again, I think this table is going to change a lot between now and the end of the season. I do think they should be looking below them rather than above them, but they've got absolutely no reason to fear Spurs. They're a point behind them so far this season. Spurs aren't in the best of form. They're playing well, so that should have the confidence to get at them a bit. It's a free hit. You know what I mean? Like getting to go to Spurs, a point behind them, with nothing really to worry about below it. For now, just have a go.
Yeah, give it a bash.
Let's rattle through the rest of the score predictions for this weekend's games. And starting with Spurs against Southampton. What do you reckon?
I reckon this is where Spurs find their groove. 3-1.
2-0 Spurs.
I was going to say 2-0 Spurs. Running through the rest of the games then. Bournemouth, West Ham. How do you see that going?
That is potentially a game of the weekend, looking at the league positions. Tough one to call. 2-1 West Ham.
I don't know for that one. I'd like to think West Ham. I want to see some side, as well as Leicester, really have a run this year. Really have a run at the top 6, potentially even threaten the top 4. West Ham look the best equipped to do that. Wolves have obviously got Europe. Everton can't really get started. 1-0 West Ham.
2-1 West Ham. The battle of the Claret and Blue. Aston Villa against Burnley.
0-0.
Yeah, 0-0. I like Villa a lot, although Wesley.
I'm going to keep Ashley Barnes in my team, so I'm hoping for 1-0 Burnley there. Chelsea against Brighton.
It's another, I've said this about so many games, over the past few weeks, but again, this is boatloads of fun. You don't know what you're getting with Chelsea. The king of banter, Kurt Zouma, services to the patter, unequal in the league this season. Chelsea will probably win 3-2 for mental sake.
Again, I've been tipping Chelsea to do actually okay this year, and I thought they were really good against Liverpool. Very unlucky not to get something from Liverpool. But it's no good putting in that performance and getting yourself over in defeat, as the expression goes, and then not beating Brighton. So they've got to win here, and they've got to win well. So 1-1.
2-0, I'll go for that one. Palace against Norwich.
Another draw, 2-2 for me.
I think I've maybe predicted like 400 goals in the league so far, so 0-0.
I'll go 1-1 for that one. And finally, the battle at the bottom: Wolves against Watford. One of these teams has got to turn it around, haven't they?
Yes, and I think it'll be Wolves. This is a bad game for Watford to be going into after that Man City result. They desperately needed. Not even a game at home where they were necessarily favourites to win, but even this fixture at home, something where they could battle in, something where they could show willing, something where even if the result didn't come, there could be a bit of fight. And I just think Wolves haven't had Europe this week for a start, so I think they should turn them over.
Yeah,
totally agree.
I'm going to go 3-0 Wolves of this one.
Ouchie, wow.
Yeah, 16-0. There we go.
That comes off. You're a genius. Right, let us know your thoughts on everything we've discussed, in particular the Newcastle Takeover, in the comment section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to What Culture Football for daily football podcasts as well. Plus, you can let us know your thoughts on Twitter at WhatCultureFC. Watch there. Follow all three of us. You can follow Adam Clery at
Adam Clery, Clery. You
can follow Andy Murray at
Andy H. Murray. The H stands for Hulk. Is he still hanging out in China?
I don't know. He used to love Hulk and Fred.
I think he lives in Glasgow now.
Oh.
There you go.
Fair enough.
You can follow me on Twitter at Adam Wilbourn. You can follow us all at WhatCultureFC, as I said. This has been the Premier League preview. My thanks to Adam Clery and to Andy Murray. Make sure you check out my interview with Gary Lineker on our What Culture main channel as well. Best friends. My thanks to these two. Thank you for watching, and we will see you soon.
Bye.